Generally, they pay attention when they think you stink. So that's great. Well, welcome, non-existent public. Our upcoming meetings, we may have another budget workshop next Wednesday, same time and place. But hopefully we can address all the parking lot questions and get everybody comfortable without meeting this month. Why don't we enter right away into new business? We have a new handout here. Everybody saw the memo. We might as well just dive into parking lot questions. They seem to be in order. Do you want to speak, Craig?
Okay, so I work primarily on two of these parking lot questions. On the technology one, Megan did sort of the nuts and bolts of the technology one of what she's trying to accomplish programmatically, and Diane did the financial piece. So principals, other administrators asked if they needed to come tonight. I said, well, if there's something on the agenda that is within your domain, then maybe you should be here. So the first part is the staffing decision-making table. So there were questions about how do we make staffing decisions? When do we ask if we need another teacher? What is the ratios? Those types of questions. So I created this table. And so your big concern tonight is the Memorial Russell piece, but we provided the data on how we do it for the whole district. And so at the elementary level, when do we need another teacher? And the primary one is the actual numbers, the actual physical bodies in the classroom. And so optimum size is usually around 17 is the, for K1 to 17 is what you'd like to see for the teacher to give enough attention for the early literacy, early mathematics. When it gets to 2021, that's when we start seeing, are we pushing the boundaries on the teacher capacity to do a good job on those first 3 years of early literacy and mathematics. And then the other thing too that they look at is what is the early testing model saying? You know, how is that cohort performing? Are there a lot of kids that are doing well? Or are there, is in that cohort, are there a lot of kids not doing as well? And so there's some of those nuanced questions. So where we are right now with the numbers are, we are pushing the edge, and as far as we can tell, and Shonda and Amanda seem to confirm this, that this will be an oversized class by 8 students, that we're going to exceed our maximum numbers by 8 students. One thing we can do, and we've done in the past, is to balance numbers. Are there parents from Gray who are there parents from either Memorial or Russell that would like to do an exchange? I think 2 or 3 years ago, there was an instance where we had 2 or 3 great parents that did like the idea of their kids going to New Gloucester at Memorial, and that helped balance out the numbers. And it worked for the parents, and it worked for the schools. That will not be the case here. Russell is at capacity, and Memorial is exceeding capacity by 8 kids. And so it kind of looks based on those numbers that we do need a teacher added for this year.
So in grade 1 right now, we currently have 4 teachers. 3. So right now we got 66 kids. Is it 68?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a new one start today.
So if we add that 4th teacher, that gets us to 17, which is where we want to be.
Correct. Now, I would make it a 1-year position because numbers are fickle. And the following year, I wouldn't want the person we hire, or I wouldn't want the staff to think that this is a permanent job. This is a 1 year. because numbers and enrollments are fickle, we may not need this teacher the following year. We don't know. It's too early to predict. So if the board were to approve of this, I would definitely make it a year-by-year basis. And then once that cohort gets done, then that's a whole other story as well.
This is super helpful. I agree that 22 kids per class is way too much for. Are there any other, as you saw this data, because I know we refresh this data all the time, are there any other red flags for you?
Not that we see at all. We've been pretty stable. Of course, the high school and middle school is a little different approach than the elementary schools. And Dunn and Russell are the most vulnerable because they're the two smallest schools. And so 8 kids one way or another makes a big deal. At Dunn, not as much. At the high school, not at all. So it's where we are. Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, this is super helpful.
Question,
Go ahead.
Sam. At the middle school, high school, what does that ratio reflect? So it's not all classes.
No, and so what I put out, so this is for the core. So English, math, science, and social studies, when I talk about optimum or maximum. So the optimum for a high school social studies core course, English core course, 20-21 kids is fine.
Yeah.
And, but that doesn't apply necessarily to like band.
Right.
So band, she might have 40 kids in band for the band period. And then the next period, she has 3 kids taking strings. So if that's, she probably ends up with the same number of kids during the teaching day, but it's separated differently. Then again, you might have something like senior year, year 2 of IB math. You only have 6 kids taking it. You got 6 kids that want to go to Orono for engineering. Do you tell them no? Or do we run a small class? In that case, we run a small class. But aside from that, we try and keep the cores 20-ish, 22-ish.
Well, I think it's well taken also that you do make a note that we try not to go below 10 kids in a class.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some core classes that are big. I know Gus is in like a 24 kid English class, and some of the social studies, like the basic freshman social studies, the basic freshman science, they're right up against it. For sure.
They are.
So it's something, but with declining enrollment. it's something to watch. Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts on class size or staffing? I think, is there anybody who objects to adding a teacher up for it? Yes.
I just, a bit of history, back in the day, when my kids were little, Memorial had an overcrowded position, something like that. I taught there for a year, but I only taught part-time. I had an English, reading class and a math class. And so I had 2 classes each day. It was around the corner from where I lived. It was an ideal teaching situation. And I knew it was only for 1 year, but it was a lot of time. They were small. I taught in one of the secretary's offices. But I mean, you know, it worked. And one of them was Linda McCann, who was on the board of selectmen with me in Boston. So, but that's a way. But it was a wonderful year. And I had been teaching elementary school for a couple of years because I was having babies. And I had 2nd and 6th grade experience with it. It's a good thing.
I like the idea that we'll be transparent with whoever. All right, I'm going to move on to the permanent substitute teachers. For discussion?
So I think the parking lot, but I think the building principals, the presenters last week were clear on what the advantages and disadvantages of our. They are working, they are needed, they are serving kids directly. They work 5 days a week directly with kids. They're helping fill the positions we can't fill. They're needed, they're reliable. And they're not on call. It's not like someone got called at 6 in the morning and they're flying in 5 minutes after school started and they don't even know anything. So you have these people that really know what they're doing. So, but some of the questions were the union. There really are, at this point, no union concerns. I spoke to Mrs. Lisa Huey today. We talked about this. So first of all, this served as a great service to the ed techs this year when we had terrible surge and just large numbers of people out. Having the schools that were fortunate enough to have them this year, it really helped them out. We don't know what next year is going to be like. We assume it's all going to be fine. What we're hoping is all those substitutes that we lost, COVID is gone, COVID is gone away forever. And all those retired people who used to be subs will come back and be subs again. Because so many left, they were scared of their health. And so maybe we'll replenish our load of substitute teachers. We have a program going on now working with Central Maine Community College. We have quite a few students at USM and St. Joe's that have put in applications to be subs. So maybe a year from today, we won't need the long-term subs. And so speaking with Ms. Huey, she's very comfortable with if we do this for one more year. She's comfortable with it, doesn't see a problem with it. I think in the notes I put, if we were to go through with this, I would do it as a one-year pilot year, collect data. What are our numbers going to be next January, February? What is our capacity to do subs? Will it increase because COVID has gone away? Will it decrease because there's another surge that came through? So I think that this year, the principals really like this. It really serves their schools well. And if we have the financial capacity to do this through external dollars this year, I think it might behoove us serve us well to do it for one more year and revisit it next year and either keep it or get rid of it next year.
Also, yeah, go ahead, Jason.
So for me, thinking about this, one of the most compelling to me is the fact that having the permanent subs decreases the likelihood of a full into just doing it, not just, but out of what their normal role is, substitute role where they're covered. It allows them to stay focused on what they're there for. So to me, that's a big component.
Very good. Look at this, Craig. It looks like he's going to be hired at an ed tech too. So.
No, what I was trying to point out is, so we have very few ed tech ones, and very few ed tech ones. We are an ed tech 2 type of school. So to get that ed tech 2 type of job, you need to have completed 60 university credits.
Right.
That is not required for the long-term sub. So the sub needs to get the CHLC just like any other employee. They need to have an interview, and then it's the principal's recommendation from there.
Would there be a problem then if the permanent sub ends up, if whatever they're subbing for turns into a long-term sub situation, is there going to be a problem with having somebody who's not first?
Yes,
So we have to address that.
correct,
Should it happen?
correct.
Yeah, because these these permanent subs are not long-term subs, in that they are intended
No,
to
I understand. that.
flit around one time a day. We wanted to hire someone for a long-term sub. And they did qualify, they might be first in line, but it actually would probably be less disruptive to try to go find that long-term sub.
But looking at the salary benefits number you've got in here, that's intended to be 10-1-ish.
No, I've tried really hard to keep it, because we're doing, yeah.
Okay.
So for me, the bigger question is, I think this is really good. It's worked well for us this year. The principals think it really provides stability at their schools. They value it. For me, if we're paying for it with ESSER dollars this year on a one-year pilot basis, and we get data next year that says, this is really working for us, we want to keep it, it'll come off the ESSER dollars and will become a local expense. And so that's what I want you to think about as we.
Right, but so that is different than what was sort of talked about last week. In that last week, we were talking about it having to be in the regular local budget.
Right.
So if you're thinking of pulling that out, paying for it with ESSER dollars,
Yes.
I can't find a reason to object to it if it's ESSER dollars.
Well,
So I just,
It seems to me like,
The advantage too is that as we go through and see if that long list of open positions, how good are we at filling those positions? And, this position would not have to be filled till August. And we can determine if we still need it, don't need it at 2 schools, don't need it at 5, and we can reallocate those ESSER funds as we need to. So that's an advantage as well, as of you putting it in the operating budget and being locked into Article 1 or whatever and asking for the money and then not needing it. So this way, like Craig says, it gives us an opportunity to evaluate it, put it where it's needed, make decisions, or use the money in another way that we would, determine as we evaluate the grant every 6 months.
Yeah.
So I think it gives us opportunities, yet we know that it's supported. And, for all the reasons that Craig listed, those are very compelling reasons. And I think that we can move forward in that direction if that's what we see fit as we go through the summer and hire and, see where we are.
so my assumption would be that come spring, towards the end of next school year, there'll be an evaluation of
Yeah.
this pilot and
basically, then we'll make the call to put it in the
whether
regular
it
budget.
should stay the same or grow worse, right?
And we're doing that with all our, for example, like, you're paying for 2 social workers out of ESSER. And it's something that people have been asking for forever. So the principals are being very beautiful of what are these people doing, how many kids are they seeing, what difference does it make? So probably as early as next January and February, these items that are being paid for by grant dollars, do we keep them? And is this something that we want to put onto our regular operating local budget? And so that'll be very important next January, February.
We don't think that it's going to get squeezed out of ESSER priorities.
No, I redid, I obviously evaluated the grant the whole time, and I've had to relook at it recently, just as we're working with the air quality project here and how we're learning about what that money looks like. So I have done some looking at it this week to see if we have enough money to fund this, and I believe we do at this point. So we have enough money to continue to fund the projects we estimated to do, social work nurses, supporting students, the air quality at the higher amount that's coming in, and we would be able to just squeeze in the subs that we needed.
And so, as like just a curiosity, anything else, the ESSER grant would fund their benefits and all that jazz, it's not just a salary piece.
Correct. And I do think moving forward, if we decide to carry forward, we also, as Craig and I talked about, have to decide where it falls within collective bargaining. What does that look like? It may be different than a per diem. There's a lot of things that we'll have time to evaluate, maybe see how other districts handle them. When is a contract opening? Add a position to the contract. So there's a lot of, moving targets. So I think in everybody's best interest to leave it the way it is right now and with ESSER funds. And it's very appropriate use of ESSER funds. ESSER
Yeah, no,
funds
that's
is
what they're
support
for.
students, and it's COVID related, and it, it fits the bill for sure. So it'll be win-win.
This seems like a good solution to me.
Yeah.
That's a
we've
significant
used
chunk
the
of
budget.
change to take out of the budget too, so
Correct.
I like it.
Yeah.
Really good. All right, let's talk about the technology requests. Megan,
Ready for-
wanna walk through the bullet points and just talk about why we need each one of these things?
Yes, so the security cameras, when I originally started, for any of you who have been here since I started, my original proposal was, my 1-year plan, 5-year plan, 3-year plan, what needed to be done. Security cameras was on that plan. Our coverage currently in all of our schools is very poor. The cameras don't cover the buildings or the outside of the buildings like they should. Their cameras are getting older. So this school year, I budgeted to replace all of the camera servers and update the software to an enterprise level security camera software versus we had really a software that was more like small business. So now the next step would be to go and upgrade our cameras so that we have better coverage at all of our buildings. So this price of $104,000 will cover all 5 buildings. So we will have really good security camera coverage in the inside and the outside of the schools. This is cabling, install, everything. We're able to look at relocating about $60,000 of that money, either using the COPS grant or E-rate funds. And so that will bring that cost down.
So that's a change from the numbers we saw last week.
So.
Yes.
Can I just, I know there was a parking lot question that came through after regarding using COPS money for that. So it was not written into the grant. So you can't just change the grant. We can try to amend the grant. And we also have to see how much the other projects are costing us. So right now, it does look like there will be money available. I'm trying to use the lens of video monitoring and see if we can get some cameras under that language without necessarily modifying the grant. But everything takes time. Once you request changes and information, so I want to have a backup in case we do take it out of the budget. And, COP says, no, you can't spend $60,000 on cameras. So we could use some of the E-rate money that we have in fund balance right now. So the first choice is COPS, if that's allowable. Right now, it's not written into the grant, but if we can, I will certainly do that, because I think that would be appropriate. Sorry, Megan.
No, that was perfect. Thank you, Diane.
We've got 2 elementary school principals here. Do we use and care about security cameras in our elementary school? How often do you use them? Just maybe like, is it like once a week? Is it once a day?
Never.
I understand in the high school, but
Dunn certainly uses.
I
kindergartners?
just pulled a video this morning of 3 kids who played in the school last night. So.
sounds relevant.
Relevant. Yeah. I think that's pretty typical. I mean,
How did the first graders get in the school last night?
what's that?
How did the first graders get in the school?
They weren't first graders.
Well, we used it when we had the fire there. We were able to, so things like that. So it is safety, not just for students within the building, but it manages the outsides of our building as well.
We also use it for the day to day stuff going on. It's moving, and we use it for fireworks. That's also to make sure kids are what they need.
Use it for outdoors. A lot of after hours entertainment on the playground and have that. So I think that's what I use most of this. Especially when the weather gets warm. Like this.
Do we use a third-party monitoring service for after hours?
I mean, we have alarm systems for fire and break-in and
Yeah.
things like that, but not for cameras, not security that way.
That might be relatively affordable. Okay. Any discussion on that? All right, tell us about the support specialist.
When the three technology support specialist positions were created, we didn't necessarily create them with their contract didn't say what. Their contract said how many days they would work, but when the positions were approved, there wasn't a day set for them. We originally started them at 220 days a year. That just, with the amount of devices we have now, including 4 grade levels worth of one-to-one devices that have been added, all staff now have 2 devices. A phone system that we manage, networks that we manage. I would like to move all 3 support specialists up to full-time year-round. Last summer, it was a struggle to get all the devices back out to all the grade levels on time. So, and because a lot of times the time they take off is during the summer when you don't work full-time year-round. So it's really a needed position with the amount of technology we currently have that we're managing.
Are they support staff contract or are they
Non-bargaining.
non-bargaining?
Once again, this was kind of a check and adjust. You know, these are different positions that we added to the budget. And we feel like a lot has happened since then. We've added a lot more devices. They're very busy. They're well allocated. We're not traveling as much between buildings. And they're doing a great job supporting all of our schools with all the devices we have. And it is warranted to make them full-time.
That 18,000, that covers the additional wage.
Yes, because they have full benefits right now. So yeah, it's just, yeah.
So that's basically just 40 more days for 3 people.
Yes.
So if they're not earning, how do we determine their like vacation days and all that sort of stuff?
We have a non-bargaining agreement.
Okay.
They're in there already. It's an agreement for non-bargaining staff.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Any other questions on that?
I think this makes a lot of sense.
I do too.
I don't know how we get stuff done without having the summer available.
So with the amount of devices, just like $18,000 to make sure that the devices work seems like a good investment.
I think we'll find ways to fill their time pretty quickly.
And they rotated their schedule, so not everybody was off the same week, at the same time during the summer, but we
Right.
do need them all.
But that ends up putting the burden on them
Right,
to
exactly.
solve their schedule issues around.
That's not
Yep.
fair.
And that's not fair to them.
Right.
So
I agree.
I think this makes perfect sense.
And it will also, you know, if we have changes in employment, it'll make it easier to hire if we need to
Oh,
and
absolutely.
things like that instead of,
Yeah.
you know, partially here or whatever. So it's to our benefit in many ways.
We need people like Max who make the hour work.
With all the investments in technology that we've had.
Yeah, 100%. Any objections to that? Good. Tell us about the firewall managed services.
Yep, the firewall managed services, what this is when I first started here, we didn't have a firewall. We now have a firewall. We have all managed switches, which means we have insight into them, whether I'm inside the network or outside. So due to our network being upgraded like it is, we have a third party company that we pay extra services for to do an extra layer of monitoring of our firewall, our network for intrusion, and they also will replace equipment if it fails that day. So that way, if we had a firewall go down, major switches go down, they'll come in and replace it. They have extras of all of our equipment right in stock in Portland. This service is paid for by E-rate. 60% is paid for E-rate by E-rate. With network security and the security environment currently in the world, to have a third party company also paying attention to intrusion, our network, having that extra set of eyes is crucial nowadays. So not only the managed piece where they really help us with anything network wise, since we don't have a network administrator. I mean, I am the network administrator, but to have a second set of eyes if something is going on, to have them help with that, but to also have them paying attention for us of anything that's bouncing our network. And already they found stuff that we've been able to find, correct, take care of. It's completely beneficial. Cybersecurity is a huge issue at this point.
How are we paying for this right now? We're already providing the service.
E-rate pays for 60% and 40% local budget. This has been in the budget for the last year or two since the firewall went in.
So this isn't a new spend, it's just a continuing spend, or they're increasing the price?
Yeah.
They're increasing the price?
It's just increasing the services to add, this is the total, but I think the increase is like 6,000. That is increasing just for the extra firewall security management.
Are we using two-step security in this district? Two-factor, yeah.
Yes,
So to just follow up on that, our insurance required that at one point. They backed off on that a little bit, so we started to do it anyway, and so it's a good idea, so we were all doing it, and all employees set up to do that and everything else. Insurance backed off of it a little bit, because it was a lot of work for everybody to do, but they are certainly not going to delay that much longer if they can retire it anyway. So we're all separate
So
now.
like 3 years, we've gone from no firewall at all to.
And that's what the world's gone to, unfortunately. So we're still, we're up to speed with that
Yep.
as we need to be, so.
So that one-to-one device out of warranty replacement cost, we'll be able to reduce that by 10,000. Good.
She says some additional funds in the budget right now to purchase some of those
Okay,
charges.
Yes.
So,
so no additional spend there.
we'll reduce the budget by 10,000.
and we always budget for out of warranty costs every year. When I go back to the last few years, even when we were paying $330,000 for our MLTI lease, we were still budgeting 50,000 for replacement and repairs that weren't warranty. So most of our devices are covered, luckily, and we bought them all, so we don't have that MLTI lease. But they're, the iPad chargers, the bricks, the Logitech keyboard cases, those things aren't covered and they are getting damaged by students. So we have to have money to replace them and keep the one-to-one program going.
And they are paying a portion of it, but it's not meeting the needs of what our expenses are.
No.
$1,400 so far this year, this is about bills, and we hope to be collecting the funds to offset these costs, but it's not happening, unfortunately. And then, teachers aren't paying for their students. At this point, we do need to continue to pay for it.
And then the last 20 grand is just moving the building.
Yeah, so we
knew that was
purchased the
coming.
building with ESSER funds. Facilities will hear about what we're doing to the building next meeting. But we do anticipate needing money to desks, chairs, shelving, all that stuff. We really don't want to take anything from the red portable, it just wouldn't be appropriate. We really need to start fresh. And I'm hoping that some ESSER funds will be able to be available to do it. If not, we're looking at this year's funds and really feel like we need to take it out of the budget for next year. But we will support having a nice building there. I mean, we need to completely do diligence on that. Work in place for that.
Matt can back up about his tech shack where his office is. He can tell you all about it.
We are thinking of leaving it in the location where it is currently, so we're looking at that right now and seeing what we can do. It's cost prohibitive to move it and all the work we need to do, and I'd rather spend the money elsewhere or developing that site a little bit, making sure we have what we need, but more information will come to facilities.
So the tennis courts are never coming back.
No, they're not. No, they're not. Well, that's on the
Next
agenda as
finance
well.
committee.
No, we have to pay what? We won't even get into that right now.
This
so.
will be a new field house, yeah.
I don't want to talk about.
Well, that's part of my reason of putting water and sewage out there so that we could, potentially have a site to do that.
Yeah.
And if we're gonna put in bathrooms in that location, how can we expand it and really make it to the benefit of other things? So I'd rather use money that way than spend $20,000 to move it, 100 yards down the road, and have to really build out that site. And that gives us
We
an
found a problem with parking, has that been an issue?
not have an issue whatsoever. Nope. No
That's with more
issues.
kids driving. than
Yeah,
ever, so
We haven't
that's great.
had, nope, it actually is in a really good location. There's lighting out there, there's, not coming.
Do you catch kids doing bad stuff in the parking lot?
That's right.
It's like,
They can't.
Yes, but not from this school district.
The tech department can put their deck is on top.
That's right, exactly. Little garden, little lunch area, you know.
Need a little outdoor speakers, you'd be like,
That's
okay,
right.
knock it off.
That's great.
Well, you know, and that's not a bad idea, to have safety out there. You know, to me, when I think about having administration or whatever out there in a place that could potentially be some activity going on, I don't know, it's not a bad thing.
It's the reason with them skateboard park is next to the state.
Right, so, you know, I think it might meet a couple of needs, so that's all good.
Any further discussion on the tech part of this parking lot?
Let's see.
Yep, go ahead.
So the 172,000 that we talked about last week is potentially going down 60.
Yeah, we just keep having a list of.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so basically as much as 70,000 potentially if everything goes through the way we want.
The Power School, was that?
Nope, but I don't think there's an answer to Power School right here, and I probably left it on my desk. So I'm gonna try to remember what I wrote. Power School, it actually is not an increase, if that's what we're paying, but the way couple of reasons, the way they billed us is crossed over years, but we also received a credit from the state, because the state started paying a portion of it. So we had quite a significant credit from the state that we were able to take last year. So our rates really have not increased. We just need to add it to the budget because we don't have that credit from that.
Pay that every year.
Yeah.
The software licenses.
Yeah. And it's support as well. So
And
Thank you for bringing it up.
From a parent perspective, Power School is infinitely more integrated into the kid's life than it was 4 or 5 years ago. We use it way more, it's way better. Gus checks it every day. I never check it, it's not my job. I'm not in high school. If he wants to fail high school, that's his business.
Yeah, it is one of our most efficient and used software programs that we have. I mean, it's district-wide. It impacts everybody.
Yeah, I feel like it's, it used to be really buggy. I feel like
Right.
now it actually works.
Most districts in the state use it. There are a few other programs, but they're not as efficient.
All right, should we move on to day one? So we've got the 2021, 21, 22, and then we've got the projected 22, 23.
So
I like the directions.
So year one, it was something that was kind of surprising to us. It started in the middle of the year. We didn't have time to plan for it. The state had a formula of how they would provide revenue for districts to support this program. So we had to put together a budget of unknowns. We thought there'd be 2 teachers, but they already determined that it would cost $205,000. That's how much they were going to provide us. So we created a budget, kind of backed into that number. And then when we got to year 2, still trying to figure it out because we didn't have a year 1 of what that actually was. We didn't have a full year. So we came up with a budget and the state once again supported that budget. Next year, it was determined as the conversations went on with the state that the funding for the day 1 program was not being treated appropriately under the legislation. So they went back and we are now receiving for next year a tuition based on per pupil, which they determine the per pupil. They're not using the October 1st count, they're using the count of the capacity of the house. So the house has a capacity of 10. That's what they're going to send us for tuition rates. Tuition rates adjust in December, so we'll get an adjustment in December. So we kind of backed into that budget once again. This is the number. I came up a little bit higher, I'm reducing it by about 11,000. We will see how we do with it. I mean, we could have additional needs of students and it may require an additional ed tech. So there is some money from the previous first year because we didn't start full. We have some backup and won't have to find it in the budget. We'll leave that money there as a placeholder for unknown needs that come up that we are required to support. So, you know, it's a program, it's being self-funded now, so I'm very pleased about that. And I hope to see that that will continue to be the case. And we are finding systems in-house to deal with that. It's paying stipends for people to do it versus using outside consultants at this point. So we're really adapting the program to be a GNG program.
So this 22-23 budget, this is enough. We're not, you know, we're cutting the transportation down to 1,000. We're cutting supplies to 2,000. We don't want to.
Yeah, I do think it's sufficient. I think that the other budgets were backed into a number. You know, we had to prove to the community,
Yeah, I don't even know
the
what the
state that that's what we're
transportation
gonna do.
would be. You know,
Yeah,
we should-
right. So I think that, you know, once again, this is a third full year of just receiving that amount of money. And, you know, they've been frugal. We had to put new carpet in the the portable out there between the high school and the bus garage. So there were things that we allowed for the expense. We were able to take rent from them. So those things are now in-house. They're our program. We own them. We're not charging any other program rent. So, you know, it's not a revenue making. It's a program that we have and it's supported by the state,
Yeah,
period.
so it's basically budget neutral. They
Yeah.
give us 117,739. That's what we spent.
Correct. And I anticipate it will be for a little bit.
Anybody? That is the first time I've understood it. So thank you.
Great, oh, good.
Now I get it.
It's been a long process.
Well, so I mean, because it was like you'd see the reduction in expenses, but then you'd see the reduction in revenue, and you know, it's just hard to square them up. So we are getting less money, but we're also spending less money.
And I believe it's sufficient.
Any questions on that? All right, the general fund balance.
Yeah, so we'd asked for kind of a history of our general fund balance. We traditionally have been able to maintain about $2,000. You know, every year you don't know what that's going to be at the end of the year. There are always circumstances that either allow us to increase the fund balance or decrease the fund balance. You know, COVID, receiving additional state aid, whether we were able to fill positions or not fill positions. So many factors go into it. Finance always looks at it very thoroughly after the audit's done. What can we afford to support the community as a buy down for taxes, if any? A few years ago, we were certainly trying to go, as you can see in 15-16 or 14-15, that our goal was actually not to have carryover. That this was not something that we wanted to continue to do, that we wanted to be fair to the community and only tax them for what we needed to do. But there are so many circumstances each year that do that. And as you can see, we've actually increased our carryover every year. As you know, last year we were able to have additional fund balance, not necessarily because we wanted to, because of ESSER, because not being able to fill positions. And, you know, we didn't go to schools full time. We didn't have fuel expenses. There were many things that contributed to that. And the finance committee will look at it, hopefully look at it as an opportunity to fulfill some other needs and put some of those funds, as a community, if we can put some of those funds into capital reserve accounts and support some projects and also be able to get us ready to support a bond that's needed for the district as our debt service reduces, and this will really give us seed money to do that without having to go to the community for everything, and ask for big, huge ticket items. And we also want to maintain our debt service so that it's not having huge peaks and valleys. So we know that that's coming up in a couple of years, so we want to be prepared for this, and having this fund balance should really support that. And so finance will look at it at the next meeting and make some recommendations to the board for the next couple of months of what they want to do with that, what they think is in the best needs of the district to do with that. And the state has once again also allowed us to increase our fund balance. We don't want to have them pay for a line of credit every year. You know, we've been very fortunate when I started here. The district, I think, was paying $10,000 to $20,000 a year just to have a line of credit. And, you know, we stopped that right away. That was one of the first expenses. I'm like, we don't need that. We have, you know, we can manage our fund balance so that we have cash flow so that we can pay our bills. But there are many years that, you know, can we pay all our bills this week? I'm going through all the bills and saying, okay, this is gonna hold off. This is gonna, you know, we can't pay that this week. Let's wait until we get our next check from the state. So we have been fortunate to not do that, but there certainly have been years that we've had to do it. And the state is increasing from 3% to 9% and then leveling off at 5% a few years down for what we can keep for fund balance. And then the other portion is we are not fully funded in that if we were to close tomorrow, we still owe teachers' pays.
Right.
So we still owe summer pays, which is over $2 million. So even when you look at a fund balance of $2 million, that may not even be sufficient to even close the doors and pay off all our salaries that we need to pay. So we are in good shape, but we are certainly not, you know, having excess fund balance. It's what is needed to support the schools.
So it's interesting, in 11-12, we had 2 million fund balance. But our budget has grown, what, 5 million since then? Probably, right? Because we're looking at $30 million budget now. I think it was 25 when I got on the board 6 years ago. So it might have been 23, 24 back then. So as a percentage, if we were still at 2 million, we'd have a
Less.
significantly less
Fund balance. Yep.
fund balance. So it's
Oh, absolutely. We have. It's not kept up.
theoretically, it should inch up a little bit.
But we also are not allowed to have, you know, the state doesn't allow us to have a huge fund balance.
Right.
You know, it's not something they want schools to have. So it's something we watch. Like I said, finance discusses it all the time and, you know, decides how we manage that.
So that's something we'll talk about in the next finance committee meeting. We have some decisions. One is the $500,000 of state aid
Correct.
that we're still sitting on. Two is how much we want to carry forward.
Yep.
So we'll get a proposal on that.
And we'll, you know, we'll look at,
I'm just thinking about timing in terms of when we get the proposal. Consider it.
well, you have, I think it's April 27th. I believe that you're voting on the budget and the finance meeting is April 13th. We will have, I have, as Doreen said, I have a running list of where we are with reductions. To be honest with you, I'm up to about $400,000 in reductions at this point. We don't know insurance.
Right.
I will get the range on Friday for health insurance. You know, it really didn't even cross my mind that it would be more than 10%. So I'm hoping that I was, you know, at the max, but it could come in more than 10%. And we may say, you know, this is an increase to the budget. You know, that's totally a wild card. But we'll have really good information for finance on the 13th. And to be able to see where we are and what, I have a whole revenue sheet of what the state revenue is and, you know, where we are with capital reserves, what's in that account, how is.
I'm just thinking practically. Finance committee meeting on 13th, they're going to take a lot of look to make a recommendation. Then we want to be able to vote on that at that special, you know, budget vote meeting that we created. Will it be too much to consider that recommendation and vote in one day?
I think, you know, I think that you'll see the entire list of reductions. We've talked about most of them. There's some, you know, a few other minor things that are in there that we're able to move out, like I mentioned last time, reworking the current Honeywell contract, you know, things like that, that we'll have more information with. I'm meeting with them on Monday. And really the big one that we're waiting for is health insurance. So I think that we'll have all the information to make a decision and for them to make a recommendation what I think they'll be able to do that.
But we should maybe expect that. Sometimes that meeting has been like 5 minutes long. I think maybe we should expect that meeting to have some substance to it, imagine it's a decision.
Sam, we're just back to these budget numbers too. 2012 was curtailment.
What's that?
2012 was a curtailment year.
Right.
Right.
So there are a couple of those years when we got smacked.
Yeah, that's why the.
That's
the
why
fund
some of these
went
numbers
down.
are.
Right, and there's a story behind every single year, so you can't take the numbers for face value at all. I mean, I would have to spend hours giving you a history of, which would be
A couple of
interesting.
those- Couple of those years were particularly.
Yeah, when you had the charter schools, I mean, there are just so many things that affected whether you had a fund balance, used an additional fund balance, or, things like that. So it's really something that you shouldn't just look at as face value. I was hesitant about even throwing the numbers out because
I know,
there's a
but
lot of meaning behind them, but I think, it's transparent. I mean, it's in our audit, it's posted on our website. It's not something that, is a secret. And I think that, you're doing your due diligence to make sure that we support the communities in the best way we can. And part of that is being healthy.
the 4 million number, says that we should do something with that.
It could be used part of it to fund this year's budget. So it's good. Last year you used 1.3 million of the fund balance to as revenue to fund the budget. That would be on that big night, that would be the number you determine is how much of that fund balance is used as revenue to complete the budget. I think
Or is there going to be a recommendation to put it in capital reserve? Or is it gonna
Well,
be-
it's also an opportunity to do other things too.
Yeah, that's
So
what
I don't want, right now I have anticipated using another $1.3 million. We may not have an additional fund balance that we're gonna support $1.3 million for at the end of this year. So, you're not necessarily gonna make it up, but I think that it's an opportunity to have a healthy discussion about it.
the date by which the decision needs to be made on the augmented ED 279 from last year.
June 30.
June 30.
It's June 30th, so that decision is due.
Yeah, we wanna get that settled.
We should make that decision when we settle it.
Because if we want to support putting additional funds into reserve account, it does go through the warrant process. So the community will vote to do it at town meeting.
Right.
It's not on the budget referendum, but it is at town meeting. So it would be a warrant article that we would need to have that the community would see to support that discussion and that proposal from the school board.
We're going to need to re-educate the public on that because it happened 11 months ago. Which would have been 11 years ago.
That's why we send them a newsletter.
Yeah, what transpired on the ED 279 last year.
Well, that they don't have to decide anything on.
No, they
That's-
don't, but just the story will need to be told of the ED 279 was revised, as you recall. The decision had been made to not provide relief for half of that money and then the other half.
Well, we brought the communities full, so we did not ask for any additional
Correct.
taxes this year.
Correct.
So we supported that amount to do that. We use that amount to do that.
All right, so that brings us to the end of the parking lot questions. Further discussion items? Everything seems pretty straightforward and reasonable. I think we've done good work to some numbers that I'm concerned about. So I don't see a need for a meeting.
Oh, please.
I don't think we have need for it, so I would recommend that we don't have it, if nobody objects.
Can I ask a question? So last week, when we had the first round of numbers representing the 6.1%, we found $430,000 to be what we've done this week. And that would bring that number down to
I have it. So the 400,000 that I found to date 120 actually would bring it to 4.67%.
So as long as the health insurance is wacky, should be okay. In terms of a reasonable.
I think
Feels, if we're going in the right direction, it feels very good that we're making good decisions.
if we can come in under 5%, that is,
Yeah.
consider that inflation is more than 5%.
I have a question. Do you have any sense of the burden rate for employees?
I'm sorry.
The burden rate? It's the cost to the employer over and above the gross compensation of the employee. Takes into account benefits. and
Oh,
so
what
forth.
portion of our
Yeah.
salary?
So if I pay you $100,000, but it costs me $150,000
Right.
to employ you because of all your vast benefits and
Yeah.
all the other paperwork I got to fill out.
Yeah, I just
Your
haven't
burden
heard
rate
it
of
called
1.1.
that term.
Yeah, it's a common accounting term.
Right.
No, I have no idea. I was glad to look into it though.
I was just curious because, it's a, I've looked for P&L statements. And
Yeah, the benefits is a significant portion.
Well, salary and benefits range anywhere from 78 to 82% of our budget, but I don't think that's what you're asking.
Yeah, well, in going through the budget here, that's a big chunk of where the money goes. And I was just curious to know, how much that burden rate is and how for various types of employees, a teacher, an administrator, other staff, and how that compares with other school districts.
Most of that stuff is bargain, so there's not a lot of wiggle room on it, but. Interesting.
And I'm not sure that I can figure it out compared to other school districts,
Yeah.
not having their information, but, and if I have questions, do you mind if I call you and ask you about that? Because I'm really not familiar with that.
Takes what it comes down to, is out what your total salary for a year is or whatever. And then they have an add-on they add on a percentage for the benefits, they add on the money for computers, they add on money, it's all percentages.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
Which it ranges anywhere from 10 to 25, 5%, if you're looking at.
No, it's already. Okay, so. We add 19%. Cost per student. We take all the salaries they figure out that based on whatever our level FTEs are, they take the total salary and then they have 19% of that for. The ed techs, they add 36%. 29%. Administrators 14%.
It's because the benefits will be relatively flat. Those salaries will be.
Yeah.
So if you have a lower salary on
Lower
the
percentages, that's right,
your
higher
benefits are
salary.
gonna be a much higher percentage.
You may be afraid of what we ask.
Yes, we are.
That's what it sounds like to me, but I will certainly look into it, and figure it out. I'm curious.
Good question. Well, that's interesting.
No, in 32 years, I've never had anybody ask that, so I'm curious now.
All right, any other questions no one's ever asked?
Hey, I'm gonna learn something. Well, lifelong learners. It's
My
good.
employer always reminded me that it cost a hell of a lot more
Oh,
to have it in that chair than I was taking home.
That was the last nonprofit I was at. They wanted us all to know how, what our all-in compensation was. And so they put together this big presentation, salary, this is how much health benefits are, this or whatever. And they presented to it, and the CEO made a giant blunder saying, and we pay for the free coffee and bagels. And all any of the employees heard was, we think, we're doing this great favor by doing coffee and bagels. And so it's like, oh, the coffee and bagels. And they just ignored the entire rest of the presentation. So
Well, it is,
never add the coffee and bagels.
it is
to the
interesting
burger.
because I don't think employees know what their maximum compensation is and how much we are contributing to health insurance. I mean, I think now with Affordable Care Act, they're more aware of that when they get a form that says, they contributed $20,000 to your health insurance. They're more aware.
Well, that's something that I.
But it's
noted.
interesting, we've tried in past years to say, okay, so just so you know, your $70,000 salary is really, 100,000 or whatever, when you add everything together.
Flex
Didn't
benefits
apply.
that alone, have in the private sector alone, you have so much money to
Right.
spend for your benefits, and it gives you an impression of, hey, this.
But
Schools
like I
are
noticed
such
that
different
in
animals.
the long-term subs discussion, if all 5 long-term subs
Right.
take, the biggest benefits they can, that's 175K. So divided by 5, that's
Yeah.
a lot of money.
I mean, health insurance alone, we budget 18,000 or anything higher, so, which is middle of the road, it's not even the highest, so
Soon we'll have universal health care in the United States. We won't have to worry about it.
That's all.
that'd be nice.
Our ballpark is 2,000 benefits to salary.
Well, it depends.
That's-
Ed techs
but I
are
mean, that's
45, teachers are,
But that's kind of the
70.
average place.
Thank you very much.
I think I'm going to ask us to adjourn unless anybody objects. All right. So we will see you for the business meeting in the first week of April. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Megan. You're not on the thing anymore, but see you later.